I stood on my parents' porch with my hand inches from the door, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs from the inside. Inside my bag was everything: 2 successful restaurants and a waterfront villa in Miami, all left to me by my grandmother. I had come home ready to share it, ready to say, "We're okay now." But then I heard my father's voice through the door. "We don't have much time. If she finds out before we act, we lose everything." My fingers froze midair. My sister laughed softly. "Relax, she's emotional right now, that makes this easy." And my mother said the one thing I will never forget. "If we play this right, she won't even realize she's signing it away." In that moment, something inside me went cold. And I knew whatever waited on the other side of that door wasn't family. I didn't knock, not right away. The porch creaked under my boots as I shifted my weight, my hand still hovering near the wood. The house looked exactly the same as it always had, white paint peeling at the edges, the same crooked wind chimes swaying gently in the afternoon breeze, the same lace curtains my mother refused to replace because they were still perfectly fine. Everything was familiar, everything was unchanged. Except me. I had just buried my grandmother, the only person in that family who ever saw me clearly, not as a disappointment, not as a problem, not as the daughter who ran off to play soldier instead of staying close, staying quiet, staying manageable. She had called me 2 months before she passed. "I don't trust them," she said simply, "but I trust you." I hadn't argued. There was nothing to argue about. Now I stood outside the same house where I had grown up, holding the truth she had left me, and listening to the people inside prepare to take it from me. My father's voice came again, sharper this time. "The lawyer said timing is everything. If we get her to sign while she's grieving, it's clean. No resistance." My stomach tightened. My sister responded, her tone light but calculated. "And if she hesitates?" A pause. Then my mother answered, "Calm, certain, she won't. Not if we handle it correctly." I felt my grip tighten around the strap of my bag. Handle it. The word echoed in my mind like something clinical, detached, controlled. My brother's voice cut in from somewhere deeper in the house. "Just don't push too hard. She gets stubborn when she feels cornered." I almost smiled at that. Stubborn. That's what they had always called it. Not resilience, not discipline, not the kind of quiet endurance that keeps you steady when everything around you falls apart. Just stubborn. My father exhaled slowly. "That's why we're not cornering her. We're guiding her." Guiding. Another word that didn't mean what it sounded like. My mother lowered her voice, but not enough. "We start with concern. She's exhausted, she's grieving, she's not thinking clearly. We suggest it's temporary, just until everything settles." Temporary. My heart skipped. My sister hesitated, and the paperwork. "It's already prepared," my father said. "Power of control over financial decisions. Nothing drastic, just enough." Just enough. I closed my eyes. Inside my bag, the envelope pressed against my side like a second heartbeat. 2 restaurants, both profitable, both fully operational, and a villa overlooking the water in Miami. Not just assets, not just money. Responsibility, legacy. And they were already dividing it in their heads. My brother let out a low whistle. "Once we get access, we should sell at least one of the restaurants, maybe both. Miami property alone could cover everything." Everything. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Debts. That was it. It wasn't about helping me, it wasn't about protecting me. It was about saving themselves. I felt something shift inside my chest, not breaking, not cracking, but hardening, like steel cooling into shape. For one brief moment, I imagined walking in, dropping the envelope on the table, and watching their expressions collapse. I imagined calling them out, forcing the truth into the open. But my grandmother's voice came back to me, steady and certain. "Don't show your hand too early." I opened my eyes. The porch didn't feel the same anymore. It felt like a boundary, a line between what I used to believe and what I now knew. I took a slow breath. Then I reached for the handle. When I pushed the door open, I didn't storm in. I didn't slam it. I didn't let any of what I had heard show on my face. I stepped inside quietly, carrying exactly the version of me they expected. Tired, hollow, breakable. My mother was the first to react. She moved quickly, her expression shifting into something soft and practiced. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice warm with concern. You must be exhausted. I let my shoulders drop just enough. It's been a long day. She wrapped her arms around me, holding me a little too tightly, a little too carefully, like I was something fragile she didn't want to crack before she was ready. My father stood a few steps back, watching. Always watching. His eyes scanned me the way they used to when I was a teenager, looking for signs of defiance, of weakness, of anything he could measure. "You made good time," he said. I nodded, didn't want to stop. My sister leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, her expression sympathetic but distant. My brother sat on the couch, phone in hand, glancing up just long enough to acknowledge me before looking back down. It looked normal. It sounded normal. It wasn't. "I'm so sorry about Grandma," my sister said softly. I met her eyes, yeah. That was all I gave her. My mother guided me toward the couch, pressing a glass of water into my hands. "Sit down. You shouldn't be making any decisions right now. You need rest." There it was. The first move. I sat. I don't really feel like thinking about anything, I said quietly, letting my voice carry just enough weight. Everything's kind of blurry. My father exchanged a glance with my mother, quick, subtle, but I caught it. Good. That's what that look meant. Good. My brother leaned forward slightly. Did the lawyer say anything after the service? I hesitated just long enough to make it believable. A little, but I couldn't really focus. My mother squeezed my shoulder. Of course you couldn't. I stared down at the water in my hands. They mentioned paperwork, I added softly, but it sounded complicated. Something about debts, maybe. I don't know. Silence fell. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. But it was there. My sister's posture shifted. My brother leaned back again, losing interest. My father's jaw tightened ever so slightly. My mother was the only one who recovered quickly. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice gentle. "That's exactly why you shouldn't handle this alone." I looked up at her, letting uncertainty flicker across my face. "I don't want to mess anything up," I said. "You won't," she assured me. "Not if you let us help." Help. I nodded slowly. Inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. They thought I was walking into their plan. They thought grief had made me softer, slower, easier to manage. They had no idea I had heard every word. And they definitely had no idea. I was about to let them believe exactly what they wanted. I stayed on the couch longer than I needed to. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted them to see me that way. My mother hovered nearby, adjusting the throw blanket over my lap, even though the room wasn't cold. She always did that when she thought she had control of a situation. Small, careful gestures that looked like care, but felt like positioning. "You should eat something," she said softly. "You haven't had a proper meal all day, have you?" I shook my head, letting my eyes stay unfocused just long enough. Not really. "I'll make you something light," she replied, already turning toward the kitchen. My father remained standing near the doorway, arms crossed, watching everything. He didn't hover like my mother. He assessed, measured, calculated. "You look worn out," he said. "I am." That part wasn't entirely a lie. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something in his own mind. That's expected. After everything. After everything. The funeral, the drive, the grief. Or the vulnerability they were counting on. My sister moved closer, sitting on the arm of the couch. "You don't have to deal with any of Grandma's stuff right now," she said gently. "We can take care of that for you." I let my shoulders sag slightly. I wouldn't even know where to start. "That's okay," she smiled. "You don't have to." My brother glanced up from his phone again. "Yeah, honestly, it's probably complicated. Taxes, business stuff, legal things." Business stuff. Legal things. I kept my face neutral, but my grip tightened slightly on the glass in my hand. "They said something like that," I murmured. It sounded overwhelming. My father stepped forward, then finally closing the distance. "That's why you shouldn't rush into anything," he said. "Especially not now." I looked up at him. "What do you mean?" He met my gaze, calm and steady. Decisions made under emotional stress are rarely good ones. There it was again. Not advice. Framing. I nodded slowly, letting his words settle exactly the way he wanted them to. "Yeah," I said, "that makes sense." My mother returned with a bowl of soup, placing it carefully in front of me like I might drop it if she didn't guide my hands. "Just eat a little," she said. "You'll feel better." I took the spoon, letting it tremble slightly, just enough. "Thank you." As I ate, the conversation shifted into something softer, more casual on the surface. They asked about my drive about the service, about whether I had seen any old family friends. I answered simply, briefly, letting pauses linger, letting silence do the work. Because in silence, people reveal more than they realize. And they did. So, the lawyer, my sister, said eventually, her tone carefully neutral. Did they give you any documents? I hesitated. Just long enough. There was an envelope, I said, but I didn't open it yet. My brother leaned forward again. You didn't even look. I couldn't, I replied quietly. It didn't feel like the right time. My mother placed her hand over mine again. Of course it didn't, she said. You're grieving. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the table. My father's voice came next, measured and deliberate. Where is it now? In my bag. He exchanged another glance with my mother. Good, he said. We can go through it together, later. Together. I felt something cold settle deeper in my chest. Yeah, I said softly, I'd like that. The lie came easily. Too easily. And that scared me more than anything. Dinner was quieter than I expected. My mother cooked more than usual roasted chicken, vegetables, even fresh bread. It was the kind of meal she used to make when guests came over, when appearances mattered. Now I understood why. This wasn't about comfort. It was about presentation. We sat around the table like we had 100 times before. Same seats, same plates, same routine. But nothing felt the same. My father carved the chicken with slow precision. My sister poured drinks. My brother scrolled through his phone between bites. And I sat there playing my role. You should stay for a few days, my mother said, breaking the silence. You shouldn't be alone right now. I nodded. I wasn't planning on leaving right away. That's good, she smiled. We'll take care of you. Take care. I forced myself to keep eating. My father looked up. Did the lawyer mention any businesses? There it was again. Direct this time. I swallowed carefully before answering. I think so. I don't remember exactly. What kind, my brother asked. I'm not sure, I said. Something about operations, maybe restaurants. The shift was immediate. It was subtle, but I saw it. My sister's eyes flickered. My brother straightened slightly. My father's knife paused for just a fraction of a second. Then my mother spoke, her tone light. That sounds like a lot to manage. It does, I agreed. You've never handled anything like that before, she added gently. I looked at her. Not confrontational, not defensive. Just steady. No, I said, I haven't. And for a moment, just a moment, I let the truth sit between us. Not the truth about the restaurants, but the truth about me. They didn't know who I was anymore. Maybe they never had. Later that night, my mother showed me to the guest room. Same as always. Clean sheets, neutral colors, no personal touches. Temporary. You should get some rest, she said, standing in the doorway. We'll talk about everything tomorrow. Tomorrow. I nodded. Okay. She hesitated for a second, then smiled softly. We're here for you. You know that, right? I met her eyes. And for a brief second, I wondered if she believed that. I know, I said. Another lie. She closed the door behind her. I waited. Counted the seconds. Listened. Footsteps moving away, voices faint in the distance. The house settling into its nighttime rhythm. Then I stood. Locked the door. And reached into my bag. The envelope was still there. Untouched. Untaken. For now. I sat on the edge of the bed, turning it over in my hands. The weight of it felt different now, not just heavy, but sharp, like something that could cut if handled wrong. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because I already knew what it contained. And more importantly, I knew what they thought it contained. I leaned back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. They believed I was tired. They believed I was vulnerable. They believed I needed them. And tomorrow they were going to act on that belief. I closed my eyes slowly. Let my breathing even out. Let my body relax into the mattress. Because if they were going to build a trap around me, I needed them to believe I was already inside it. I didn't sleep. Not the way normal people do anyway. My body stayed still, my breathing slow and even, but my mind kept moving, tracking sounds, mapping patterns, counting footsteps the way I had learned to do in places where the wrong assumption could cost more than sleep. Around midnight, the house settled into a rhythm. Pipes clicked softly in the walls. The refrigerator hummed. My brother's footsteps faded down the hallway, followed by the low murmur of a TV somewhere behind a closed door. And then, just after one, voices. Low, careful. Coming from the kitchen. I opened my eyes. Didn't move. Listened. We shouldn't wait too long, my sister was saying. Her voice carried just enough urgency to cut through the quiet. She's already asking questions. She's not asking the right ones, my father replied. His tone was calm. Too calm. She doesn't need to, my mother added. That's the whole point. I sat up slowly, letting my feet touch the floor without a sound. The guest room door didn't creak, I knew that from years ago. I crossed the room and pressed my ear lightly against the wood. Their voices sharpened. Clearer now. We bring the doctor in tomorrow, my father said. No delays. My chest tightened. Tomorrow. That fast, my sister asked. The longer we wait, the more time she has to think, he replied. We don't want that. No, they didn't. My mother exhaled softly. She looked fragile tonight. That works in our favor. Fragile. I almost smiled. My brother's voice cut in lower than the others. And if she refuses? A pause. Then my father answered, She won't. Confidence. Absolute. How can you be so sure, my sister pressed? Because she's predictable, he said. She always has been. She wants approval. She avoids conflict. If we present this as help, she'll take it. I leaned my forehead against the door, letting that settle. Predictable. That was the version of me they were working with. Not the one who had spent years making decisions under pressure. Not the one who had learned to read people before they spoke. Not the one who understood that control rarely looks like force, it looks like concern. My mother spoke again, her voice softer now. We'll frame it carefully. Temporary support, just until she's stable. The word hung in the air. Stable. My sister hesitated. And the paperwork? It's ready, my father said. Financial oversight first, then we expand if necessary. Expand. My stomach turned. My brother let out a quiet laugh. Once we're in, we're in. She won't even know what she signed until it's too late. Silence followed that. Not uncomfortable. Not uncertain. Just agreement. I stepped back from the door. Slowly. Carefully. Because that was it. That was the moment everything became clear, not just what they were doing, but how far they were willing to go. This wasn't about helping me manage a difficult situation. This was about removing me from it entirely. I returned to the bed, sitting on the edge with my hands resting loosely on my knees. My pulse was steady. Not because I wasn't affected, but because I was. And I knew better than to let that show. Anger, fear, betrayal, they all feel powerful in the moment. But they cloud judgment. They rush decisions. They push you into reacting instead of thinking. And reacting was exactly what they were expecting. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Good. That meant I still had time. I opened my contacts and scrolled down to a name I hadn't needed to use yet but had been told to save. Daniel Reyes, Estate Counsel. My grandmother had given it to me months ago. Only if something feels off, she had said. I stared at the name for a second. Then I dialed. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, he picked up. Reyes. His voice was alert, focused, like he hadn't been asleep at all. This is Claire, I said quietly, Margaret's granddaughter. A pause. Then I was expecting your call. That sent a chill through me. She told you, I asked. She told me enough, he replied. Are you safe? I glanced at the door. At the hallway beyond it. At the moment, I said. Then listen carefully, he continued. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to any evaluations or consultations arranged by your family, and do not let them isolate you from communication. Too late for that last part. But not entirely. They're planning something, I said, tomorrow. I assumed they would move quickly, he replied. We can move faster. I leaned forward slightly. What do I need to do? Trust, he said. We'll establish one immediately. That will protect the assets legally. After that, we document everything, every conversation, every attempt at control. And if they push harder, I asked. They will, he said, which is why you need to stay exactly where you are mentally. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? Let them think they're in control, he said. People reveal more when they believe they're winning. I exhaled slowly. That I understood. I can do that, I said. I know you can, he replied. Your grandmother was very clear about that. Something tightened in my chest at that. Not pain. Not exactly. Something closer to responsibility. I'll send you secure documents within the hour, he continued. Review them privately. Sign only through the encrypted link. Okay. And Claire, he added. Yes. You're not alone in this. I didn't answer right away. Because for the first time since I had stepped onto that porch, I believed him. After the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. Not thinking. Not planning. Just letting everything settle into place. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Because now I knew what that quiet was hiding. Tomorrow they would bring the doctor. They would sit me down. They would ask gentle questions. They would frame concern as necessity. And they would expect me to comply. To nod. To trust. To sign. I lay back slowly, staring at the ceiling. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind. Power isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who controls the outcome. I closed my eyes. They thought they were setting the stage. They thought they were leading the conversation. They thought tomorrow would be the beginning of their plan. But they were wrong. Tomorrow wasn't the beginning. It was the point where everything they believed would start to fall apart. And I was going to let it happen. Exactly the way they wanted. Until the moment it cost them everything. I woke up before the house did. Not because I had slept well, but because I hadn't slept at all. The sky outside the window was still gray, the kind of early morning light that makes everything look softer than it is. For a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. Silence. No footsteps, no voices, no movement. But that didn't mean nothing was happening. It meant everything was waiting. I sat up slowly and reached for my phone. The encrypted message from Reyes had come through hours ago. Documents, instructions, a path forward that didn't involve asking permission from anyone in this house. I had already signed what mattered. The trust was active. The assets were protected. And no one downstairs knew it yet. I set the phone down and stood moving quietly through the room. I chose simple clothes, jeans, a neutral sweater. Nothing that suggested strength, nothing that suggested control. Today I needed to look like someone who could be managed. In the mirror, I practiced the version of myself they believed in. Shoulders slightly rounded. Eyes a little unfocused. Breathing slower than normal. It wasn't acting. It was discipline. Downstairs, my mother was already in the kitchen. She turned when she heard me, her expression softening instantly. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep. She nodded sympathetically. That's expected. Expected? Everything about me in their eyes was expected. She set a bowl of oatmeal on the table. Thin, almost watery. I sat down and picked up the spoon, eating just enough to make it believable. You don't have much of an appetite, she observed. I'm not really hungry. Another note on the checklist. My father entered a few minutes later, already dressed, already alert. He looked at me briefly, then at my mother. How is she? He asked. She's tired, my mother replied. He nodded once. Good. Again that silent confirmation. My sister joined us, followed by my brother. The room filled slowly like a stage assembling itself before a performance. No one mentioned it. But everyone knew. At exactly 10 o'clock the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the room like a signal. My mother stood immediately, smoothing her hands over her shirt before opening the door. Doctor, thank you so much for coming. He stepped inside with an easy smile, mid-50s, clean-cut, confident, the kind of man people trust without asking why. Of course, he said, I'm happy to help. Help. He looked at me, his expression softening just slightly. You must be Claire. I nodded. Hi. He took a seat across from me in the living room, setting a leather folder on the coffee table. My family gathered around, not too close, not too far, just enough to feel supportive. Controlled. Your family's been very concerned, he began. I know. My sister leaned forward. She hasn't been sleeping, and she barely eats. My brother added, she's been distracted, forgetful. The doctor nodded, making notes. Grief can affect people in many ways, he said. My father spoke next, his tone calm and reasonable. We just want to make sure she's taken care of. Taken care of. I kept my eyes lowered. Let my hands rest loosely in my lap. Let my breathing stay slow. The doctor asked simple questions first. What day is it? Thursday. Where are we? My parents' house. Do you know why I'm here? I hesitated. Then to talk. He smiled gently. That's right. Everything about him was designed to feel safe, which made it dangerous. He shifted slightly in his chair. Have you been feeling overwhelmed? Yes. Confused. Sometimes. Like it's hard to make decisions. I paused longer this time. Yeah. Around me I felt the shift. Subtle, but real. They were getting what they wanted. My mother reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. She's been through a lot. The doctor nodded again, writing something down. I understand, he said, and that's exactly why support can be helpful. Support. Oversight. Control. Different words. Same meaning. What kind of support? I asked quietly. He leaned forward slightly. Someone to help manage things temporarily. Until you're feeling more stable. Stable. There it was. The word they had rehearsed. I looked up at him then. Really looked. For the first time since he walked in. And what does that involve? I asked. A structured plan, he said. Guidance with decisions. Financial oversight if necessary. Financial. There it was again. I glanced around the room. My mother's expression was soft, encouraging. My sister's was attentive. My brother's was impatient. And my father was watching me. Waiting. For the moment I agreed. For the moment I handed everything over. I leaned back slowly. Let the softness drain, not all at once, just enough. I've managed operations under pressure before, I said. The room shifted. Slightly. My father frowned. This isn't the same thing. No, I agreed, it's not. I looked back at the doctor. This is about control. Silence. Sharp. Immediate. My mother's hand tightened around mine. Sweetheart, that's not what this is. Yes, it is, I said, still calm. You're here to evaluate whether I can make my own decisions. The doctor cleared his throat. We're just exploring options. No, I interrupted gently. You're building a case. My sister's voice rose slightly. Claire. I turned to her. You said I was forgetful, distracted. She froze. You said I wasn't sleeping, I continued, that I couldn't eat. My brother shifted in his seat. And you, I said, looking at my father, said I shouldn't make decisions right now. His jaw tightened. I looked back at the doctor. And you're documenting all of it. He closed his folder slowly. I think emotions are running high, he said. They are, I agreed, which is why you should leave. My mother's voice broke. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking exactly clearly, I replied. I stood. Slowly. Deliberately. I do not consent to any evaluation, I said, and I do not authorize any recommendations regarding my personal or financial decisions. The words landed harder than anything I had said before. Because they weren't emotional. They were precise. The doctor hesitated. Then he stood. This may not be the best time. No, I said, it's not. He gathered his things without another word and walked toward the door. My mother followed him, her voice low and urgent. The door closed. And the silence that followed was different. Not controlled. Not calculated. Cracked. My mother turned back first. What is wrong with you? She demanded. Do you know how that looked? I met her gaze. Like the truth, I said. My father stepped forward, his voice colder now. You embarrassed us. No, I replied. You embarrassed yourselves. My brother scoffed. You're overreacting. I shook my head slightly. No, I'm responding. My sister crossed her arms. To what we were trying to help you. I looked at all of them. One by one. And for the first time, I didn't see family. I saw intent. You weren't trying to help me, I said quietly. You were trying to control me. No one spoke. Because they couldn't. Because the truth doesn't leave room for negotiation. I reached down and picked up my bag. Inside the envelope waited. Still unopened. Still powerful. And now, finally, Useful. No one moved when I opened my bag. That was the strange part. After everything that had just happened, the doctor leaving my mother's voice rising, my father losing that polished calm he wore like a uniform of his own, you would think someone would have stopped me. Said something, reached for the envelope. But they didn't. They just watched. And maybe that was because even then they still believed the papers inside belonged to a story they could manage. Debts, loose ends, complications, something I would need them to untangle. I pulled the envelope out slowly and held it in both hands. It felt heavier now than it had on the porch, heavier than it had in the guest room in the middle of the night, not because the contents had changed, but because I had. My mother folded her arms, trying to recover her balance. What is that supposed to prove? I looked at her, nothing. Then I looked at my father. It explains. His face remained hard, unreadable in the way men like him mistake for strength. My sister stood near the dining table with her arms locked across her chest. My brother had pushed himself halfway up from the couch, restless now, alert in a way he hadn't been all morning. I slid a thumb beneath the seal and opened the envelope. The paper made a quiet sound in the room. Small, ordinary. But it landed like a gunshot. I didn't open this at the funeral, I said. And I didn't open it when I got here. I already knew most of what it said because Grandma told me enough before she died. My mother's expression changed first, not into guilt, not into sorrow, but into something sharper, interest. I unfolded the first page. She left me ownership of 2 restaurants, I said, my voice even. Not shares, not partial control, full ownership. My brother straightened fully. What? I kept going. 1 in Coral Gables, 1 in Miami Beach, both profitable, both fully staffed, both operational. Silence. Real silence this time, the kind that empties a room of everything but reaction. Then I lifted the second page. And the villa in Miami, I said, she left that to me too. My sister's mouth parted slightly. My brother muttered something under his breath I didn't quite catch. My mother took 1 small step toward me before stopping herself. Only my father stayed completely still. His eyes didn't widen. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me with a new calculation settling into place behind them, faster, colder, more dangerous than surprise. My mother found her voice first. Oh, honey, she breathed, and just like that she changed. The anger softened. The outrage vanished. Her face rearranged itself into amazement, then pride, then affection so sudden it would have been impressive if it weren't disgusting. Why didn't you tell us? I folded the papers carefully and slid them back into the envelope. Because I heard you first. The words landed exactly where I wanted them to. My sister looked away. My brother rubbed a hand across his jaw. My mother's expression faltered, but only for a second. My father finally spoke. Your grandmother should have discussed that with the family. I looked at him and almost laughed. The family, I repeated. You mean the same family that brought in a doctor to help decide whether I was fit to manage my own life? His jaw tightened. You're twisting this. No, I said, I'm naming it. My mother stepped in before he could answer, her voice smooth again. Claire, nobody was trying to take anything from you. We were worried, that's all. I held her gaze. And that was when I saw it clearly, not just the greed, not just the panic, but the speed with which they adapted. They didn't care that I had caught them. They cared that the strategy had failed. So now they were changing tactics, slipping into another shape, another tone, another version of concern. My brother let out a low whistle. 2 restaurants, he said, trying for casual and failing. That's big. Mm-hmm. My sister uncrossed her arms and took a step closer. Are they hard to run? There it was. Already. Not grief. Not what Grandma wanted. Not how I was feeling. Not even whether I planned to keep them. Just management. Just access. Why, I asked. She gave a quick, nervous smile. I'm just saying businesses like that can be a lot for one person. My mother nodded eagerly, especially after everything you've been through. After everything. The phrase had become a tool in this house, a soft blanket thrown over any attempt to shrink me. My father moved toward the armchair and sat down at last, leaning forward with his forearms on his knees. Restaurants are complicated, he said. Employees, vendors, payroll, insurance, taxes. It's not the kind of thing you should handle impulsively. I studied him for a moment. There was no raised voice now, no pretense of crisis, just authority, familiar, paternal, carefully measured. And underneath it, urgency. They've been running successfully without me so far, I said. That's not the point, he replied. No, I said quietly, I know. The room shifted again after that. Not all at once, not dramatically, but I could feel it. My mother insisted on making coffee, then asked if I wanted lunch. My sister offered to sit down with me later and look over the paperwork. My brother started talking about Miami real estate like he'd always cared about market trends. Even my father softened his tone, speaking less like someone who had been caught and more like someone repositioning himself for the next move. If I hadn't known what I knew, it might have worked. That was the frightening part. People always imagine manipulation as something obvious, cruel, loud, easy to spot. But most of the time it sounds reasonable. It sounds loving. It sounds like let us help. By late afternoon, the house had become almost unbearable in its politeness. My phone, which had been inconveniently absent that morning, reappeared on the side table with a full battery. My mother made a point of setting it there in front of me, smiling as though the gesture itself proved innocence. There, she said, you probably need this. I nodded, thanks. My sister knocked before entering the guest room that evening. She had never knocked in this house before. I was thinking, she said, leaning lightly against the doorframe. Maybe once things settle down, I could come with you to Miami for a few days. Just to help you get organized. I looked up from the bed. Why would I need help getting organized? She laughed softly. Come on, Claire, it's a villa, 2 restaurants, that's a lot. There was no cruelty in her voice now, no edge. That almost made it worse. Because it meant she had practiced this too, the gentle version, the useful version, the sisterly version that made selfishness look like support. I'll manage, I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You always say that. After she left, I sat in the quiet and stared at the phone in my hand. The politeness downstairs wasn't relief. It wasn't love. It was recalibration. They had tried to corner me through weakness. That hadn't worked. So now they were going to come through warmth, through access, through proximity. The smile instead of the threat. The embrace instead of the form. The invitation instead of the demand. Different method. Same objective. I stood and crossed to the window, looking out over the dark yard. The wind chime moved slightly in the evening air, tapping out the same dull notes I had heard since childhood. Somewhere below me I heard my father's voice low and firm, then my mother's sharper, then silence. I didn't need to hear the words to understand the shape of the conversation. They weren't giving up. They were adjusting. And that was the moment everything changed, not because I had revealed the truth, but because I understood something even more important. Catching them had not ended the danger. It had only forced it to evolve. The first message came the next morning. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even labeled. Just a number I didn't recognize and a single line of text. Trust established, assets secured, further instructions to follow. I read it standing in the bathroom with the faucet running, the sound masking everything else. My reflection stared back at me through a thin layer of steam, my face sharper now, clearer somehow. Not calmer, but steadier. I typed a single response. Understood. Then I deleted the thread. By the time I walked downstairs, my mother was already moving through the kitchen, humming softly like nothing had happened the day before. My sister sat at the table with a notebook open, my brother scrolling through something on his phone. My father stood by the window, staring out as if he were watching something in the distance. The scene looked normal. It always did. Good morning, my mother said, turning with a warm smile that arrived a fraction too quickly. Morning. She poured coffee into a mug and placed it in front of me before I even sat down. I thought we could all talk today, she added lightly. No pressure, just planning. Planning. I took a sip of coffee and let the silence stretch just enough to make them feel it. I might head into town first, I said. My father turned immediately. Why? I looked at him over the rim of the mug. I need some air. You can get air here, he replied. I prefer movement. A small pause. Then my mother stepped in. Of course, just don't overdo it. There it was again. Permission disguised as care. I set the mug down. I won't. No one stopped me when I picked up the keys from the bowl by the door. That was new. Yesterday there would have been a question, a suggestion, a subtle redirection. Today, nothing. Because they were adjusting. And so was I. I didn't go far. A small cafe on the edge of town. Quiet, unremarkable. The kind of place where no one asks questions and no one looks twice. I sat by the window, my back to the wall, my phone on the table. Another message had come through. Financial access restricted to trustee authority only. All external requests denied. I exhaled slowly. That meant no one could touch the restaurants or the villa without going through the trust. Not my father. Not my sister. Not anyone they brought in. For the first time since the porch, I felt something close to relief. Not safety. Not yet. But stability. A second message followed minutes later. Background check complete. You were correct to proceed. I stared at the screen. Then the details came in. Refinanced home, missed payments, credit lines extended beyond limit. My brother personal loans, gambling indicators. My sister co-signed liabilities. I leaned back in the chair, the noise of the cafe fading into something distant and unimportant. It had never been about helping me. It had never been about concern. It had been about survival. Their survival. And I had been the solution. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not in anger. Not in shock. Just clarity. Because now everything made sense. The urgency. The plan. The timing. They hadn't chosen this moment because I was vulnerable. They had chosen it because they were. When I returned to the house, the air felt different. Thicker. Like something had shifted just beneath the surface. My brother was in the living room pacing. "Where were you?" he asked the second I stepped inside. "Out." He frowned. "You didn't say where." I didn't think I needed to. He held my gaze for a second too long before stepping aside. "Just checking." I nodded and walked past him. In the kitchen, my mother stood at the counter, her hands moving quickly through something that didn't require that much attention. "You were gone a while," she said. I needed time. She turned her smile softer this time, more careful. "Of course you did." My father sat at the table, papers spread in front of him. That was new. "Sit down," he said. I didn't. "I'm fine standing." He looked up, irritation flashing briefly before disappearing again. "We've been reviewing some options." Options? I glanced at the papers. Not legal documents. Not yet. But close enough. "We think it would be wise," he continued, "to bring in a financial advisor. Someone neutral, just to help you make informed decisions." I crossed my arms loosely. "I already have counsel." His expression tightened. "Who?" "Someone Grandma trusted." "That doesn't mean—" "It means enough," I said calmly. Silence fell again. Different this time. Less controlled. More strained. My sister stepped in from the hallway, her voice light. "Nobody's trying to take anything from you, Claire." I looked at her. Not unkindly, but clearly. "I know," I said. That stopped her. Because it wasn't agreement. It was acknowledgement. I knew exactly what they were trying to do, and I knew exactly how they were going to keep trying. That night I didn't wait for them to make the next move. At 9:30 I stepped outside and made the call. "Now," I said when Reyes answered. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it." At exactly 10 the next morning the doorbell rang again. But this time, it wasn't the doctor. 2 men stood on the porch. One in a familiar jacket, and one in a suit. "This is unnecessary," my mother snapped as they stepped inside. "No," the man in the suit said calmly. "It's appropriate." He turned to me. "Claire Carter." "Yes." "I'm with Adult Protective Services." The room shifted instantly. Not slowly. Not subtly. Completely. My father stood. "There must be some mistake." "There isn't," the man replied. "They didn't raise their voices. They didn't accuse. They asked simple questions. Clear questions. Do you have full access to your personal communication? Yes. Has anyone attempted to influence your financial decisions under pressure? Yes. Have you been encouraged to sign documents you didn't fully understand? Yes. Each answer landed heavier than the last. My mother tried to interrupt once. She was stopped. Politely. Firmly. By noon, the house felt smaller. By 2, no one spoke unless spoken to. By 4, the silence wasn't controlled anymore. It was fractured. You did this, my brother said finally. I looked at him. No, I replied. You did. My father's voice was low. You've made a mistake. I shook my head. No, I corrected one. And that was the moment I understood something fully, completely, without doubt. I didn't need to fight them. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to prove anything. Because the ground they were standing on was already gone. I didn't leave immediately. That would have been too easy for them, not for me. Leaving in anger, slamming doors, throwing words like weapons, that's the kind of ending people expect. The kind that lets everyone pretend the problem was the moment, not the pattern. I wasn't interested in giving them that. So I stayed one more night. Not to reconcile, not to explain. Just to make sure I left on my terms. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Not peaceful, just stripped of performance. My mother didn't hover. My sister didn't knock. My brother stayed in his room. My father avoided eye contact altogether, moving through the house like a man who had lost something he couldn't name out loud. Dinner was simple, no extra dishes, no forced conversation. We sat around the table, 4 people pretending nothing had shifted, and one person who no longer needed to pretend anything at all. I ate slowly, methodically, the way I had been trained to do when everything around me felt unstable. No one asked me about the restaurants. No one mentioned Miami. No one brought up the doctor, or APS, or anything that mattered. Because for the first time, they understood they couldn't control the outcome. Later that evening, my father found me in the living room. You're leaving, he said. It wasn't a question. I looked up from where I was sitting, my bag already packed beside me. Yes? He nodded once, absorbing that. You could stay, he added. We can reset things. Reset. The word hung in the air like something fragile. I stood slowly facing him. You don't reset something like this, I said. His jaw tightened. We're still your family. I held his gaze. And for a moment I saw it something almost real. Not regret, not exactly. Something closer to recognition. But it came too late. I know, I said. That's what makes it harder. Silence stretched between us. Then he said the one thing I knew he would. If you walk out that door, he said quietly, don't expect things to be the same. I almost smiled. I don't, I replied. And for the first time, I meant it without any doubt. My mother didn't come downstairs when I carried my bag to the door. My sister stayed in the hallway, arms folded, watching. My brother stood near the kitchen, his expression unreadable. No one tried to stop me. That would have required admitting what they had done. Instead, they let me leave. As if that made it easier. As if silence could undo intent. I paused at the door, my hand resting on the handle. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to remember this moment clearly. The weight of the air. The way the house felt behind me. The version of myself I was about to leave there. Then I opened the door and stepped outside. The drive to Miami felt longer than it should have. Not because of distance, but because of what it represented. Every mile put space between me and a version of life that had never really been mine. By the time I reached the city, the sun was setting, casting everything in that soft, golden light that makes even unfamiliar places feel like possibility. The villa stood exactly where the document said it would. Quiet. Solid. Real. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, my hands resting on the steering wheel, my breath steady. No one was watching. No one was waiting. No one was deciding anything for me. I stepped out and walked to the front door, the key cool in my hand. When it turned in the lock, the sound felt final. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just certain. The first night I didn't unpack much. A few clothes. My phone on the nightstand. The envelope on the counter. I walked through the house, slowly taking in the space, not as something I needed to prove I deserved, but as something I was responsible for. The kitchen overlooked the water. The living room was open, quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't feel empty. The kind that felt like space. I sat down on the floor near the window, my back against the wall, and let the stillness settle around me. For the first time in days, I wasn't waiting for anything. The messages started the next morning. My sister first. Can we talk? My brother next. You didn't have to do all that. My father didn't text. He never did. My mother waited the longest. When her message came, it was just one line. We never meant to hurt you. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I set the phone down. Not because I didn't understand what she meant, but because understanding didn't change anything. Weeks passed. Then months. The restaurants ran exactly as they were meant to, structured, efficient, stable. I visited both, met the managers, learned the systems. Not to prove anything. Just to know. The villa became something else entirely. Not a symbol. Not a victory. Just a place. A place where decisions were mine. Where silence wasn't pressure. Where control didn't wear the mask of care. I set boundaries the way I had learned to. Clear. Direct. No explanation beyond what was necessary. One message to my family. I'm safe. I'm stable. I'm not discussing assets. Please respect my request for space. No anger. No accusations. No invitation. Sometimes late at night I thought about the porch. The moment my hand hovered before the door. The version of me who had been ready to walk in and say, "We're okay now." I didn't miss her. But I understood her. Because she had believed something that felt true at the time. That family meant safety. That love meant trust. That being seen meant being accepted. Now I knew better. Family isn't who stands closest to you. It's who respects the space you need to stand on your own. Love isn't something that requires your signature. And concern isn't something that takes your power away. On my birthday, I went to visit my grandmother's grave. Alone. I stood there for a long time, not saying much. Just being there. You were right, I said eventually, about all of it. The wind moved through the trees softly. Not an answer. But enough. I'm okay, I added, better than okay. And I was, not because everything had worked out perfectly. Not because the situation had been easy, but because I had chosen myself. And that was something no one could take away. If you've ever been told you're too emotional to make your own decisions, if you've ever been made to feel like your strength was a problem, or your independence was something that needed to be managed, then you understand this story. You understand what it means to see clearly, to step back, to choose differently, and to walk away not in anger but in clarity. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Leave a comment below and tell me your story or what part of this resonated with you. We share stories like this every day, real, raw, and worth hearing. So if this one stayed with you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Let's keep walking this road together.